Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 86th installment in the Torah portion of the week. We're in the book of Numbers, holding by Parshas Shelach. Parshas Shelach speaks about the sin of the spies and the fact that because the spies, when they looked at the land of Israel and didn't think they were able to conquer it, and they spoke badly against the land, so the Jewish people had to go round about in the desert for 40 years, until that generation pretty much died out so they could go into the land. So it speaks quite a bit about the spies, and then speaks about tzitzis at the end as well. So I don't want to speak about either one of those topics, but there is an interesting topic that I do wanna hit, and that is, if you look at Book of Numbers, chapter 15, verse 15 and on, right? It says that the Jewish people have one law for them, for the Jews, one law for the convert. It's a statute, means the laws. There are laws that they have to keep even if they don't make any sense. They're a statute forever for all future generations. Just like the convert has to keep standing in front of God. Now, that's one thing. And then in verse 16, it says it's one Torah, one law, right? It'll be for the ger, that for the convert, or actually really for the ger toshav, right? Because the convert's really a Jew, right? Someone who's a non-Jew lives amongst the Jewish people. Now, there is a lot of issues with this statement because, first of all, at least in the second verse we quoted, in verse 16, if it's talking about one law for all, well, we understand that. That's talking about a convert as well, right? The convert's a Jew, as long as the conversion is done properly. So if the conversion is done properly, so then what are we saying? It's one law, right? So that needs to be understood. And the first part, which we're going to hit first, is that it's a law, it's a law that what we call a chok. There's a difference between a chok and a mishpat. We mentioned many times. The chok is a law I don't necessarily understand, and I probably won't understand. Which, law, let's say like the red heifer, because the red heifer, they took this cow that was never worked or anything, and they took this cow and they took the ashes from it, and someone who was impure became pure, and the Kohen that made the person pure, he becomes impure. So that's something that doesn't make any sense, because if he's pure, how can he be impure and he makes someone else pure, right? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So comes along the Netziv, one of the great Torah giants 150 years ago, who was the head of the yeshiva of Volozhin, after Chaim of Volozhin. The Netziv is an acronym for Naftali Tzvi Berliner, right, from Berlin. Naftali Tzvi, Netziv, right, from Berlin. Etc. So he says like this. He says when in verse 16, where it says it's going to be one Torah, one judgment for all, he says that the rabbis that add on laws in all future generations is called Torah. First of all, when they add on laws, what are they doing? Even though the Torah says in the book of Deuteronomy, not allowed to add or subtract. So their adding doesn't necessarily mean they're making new laws. What they're doing is giving boundaries for the laws of the Torah. In other words, there are only 3 of the 39 categories of quote-unquote work that are forbidden according to the Torah, that are mentioned explicitly in the Torah, and it comes in conjunction with anything that was done in the tabernacle was forbidden to do on Shabbos. So the rabbis say that anything similar to any of those Torah prohibitions is still going to be forbidden. So the majority of laws and the laws of Shabbos, what you're not allowed to do, are based on the fact that they don't want a person to come and transgress a Torah prohibition. So anything similar to the Torah prohibition will be forbidden. The change in the Torah, they're adding on to it. So even here, the Netziv says that the rabbis of every generation, can add on. It means they're making fences around it. Does not mean that they're adding on and making up their own things. Now, some people may look at it as that being the case, but as we explained, they make boundaries around the Torah. Not the fact that they're changing it and making it into something new. Now also, he brings out that even something that is not explicit in the Torah is still called mishpat, still called the law that a Jew has to keep. That it's something that makes sense to our logic. Right? So even if the Torah doesn't mention it, we still have to keep it. So a non-Jew, right, a non-Jew doesn't convert, not interested in converting, so the same thing will apply to him. He has to keep anything that makes logical sense. To our minds. Also, in verse 16, it says it's going to be the same law for the convert or the seemingly the non-Jew that lives in the land. So that's the question. If it's a convert, I understand it's the same law, right? If it's a ger toshav, which is someone who goes against idolatry, someone who lives as a non-Jew, as a non-Jew without converting in the land of Israel, so how can the same law apply, right? Again, this is often misquoted, and the fact that non-Jews should be able to do the same thing as Jews, well, it's not necessarily the case, right? And that we're going to see in a second. So the Netziv over here says that it's going to be the same law without any distinctions, and here that when the Torah mentions something explicitly, it is it's a law that we can make sense out of. There's some laws that we can't make sense out of, but something that we can make sense out of, even if the reason is gone by the wayside, you still have to keep it, right? The difference of opinion. There's a difference of opinion whether if the reason for the law, whatever the law is, disappears. Difference of opinion whether you have to keep it or not. Some say the fact that the reason for the law disappears, so we don't have to keep it. Others hold, okay, that may be one of the reasons that it was given. Doesn't mean it was the only reason, that was given. And the last thing he says here is that the details of the mitzvahs are also given, they're also mitzvahs given without any reason, right? Those are things we don't necessarily understand so well. And the fact that, as he brings down here, the heavens and the earth are established by these laws. In other words, they keep to what heavens and earth need to do based on the fact that Jewish people keep these laws. So there are a number of things here. So we're going to take it step by step. The first question, really, I guess, is the more important question we want to deal with, is this misconception, right? The misconception that it says that it's going to be one law for a convert and for somebody who lives amongst the Jewish people. Actually, let's rephrase that. We have to be more specific. It's one law for the convert that dwells amongst you, and it's for all generations. Now, obviously, if he dwells amongst you, and he's a convert, so he's no different than a Jew. Right? So we can't necessarily be talking about a convert, because if the conversion is done properly, then totally, 100%, he's a Jew. So it must be talking about a ger toshav. Right? A ger toshav, again, is somebody who does not convert to Judaism, goes against, meaning does not hold of idolatry, is not doing any idolatry, stays away from idolatry, and lives amongst the Jewish people. Then the Torah says it's going to be one law. Right? It's going to be one law for them, as it says in the next verse. Now, that needs clarification. The reason it needs clarification is a non-Jew and a Jew are different. A ger toshav, right, is just a non-Jew who goes against idolatry and doesn't want to convert. So, by definition, it'll be a Noahide, even though some people want to say there's ger toshav, there's Noahide, the super Noahide, super ger, whatever you want to call him. For argument's sake, we're going to call him a ger toshav, right? We're going to say across the board, he's a non-Jew, he doesn't hold by idolatry, he's not doing idolatry, and he's going to hold by the laws that he needs to keep. Right? So, in essence, he's a Noahide. Noahide, ger toshav, right? According to me, definition is going to be no different. Right? Definition is going to be the same. So that being the case, how can it be one law? Can't be one law. They're non-Jews. Non-Jews don't have the obligation, certainly, that Jews have. They don't convert. Right? If they don't convert, so why should they be able to keep the Torah like a Jew? So now this is very important. It's very important because the idea of, having one law, we could look at it like this. And I think this is the obvious way to look at it, and that is that the Torah is universal. Anybody who wants to come tap in, they're allowed to come tap in. Right? But that means they have to tap in for what they need to do. In other words, the Torah doesn't change. It's just a question of how we look at what they're going to do, what they're going to be obligated to do. If it's a Jew, right, then he's got to do everything, right? Whatever applies to him. If there's things that don't apply to him, okay, so he can't do it. But for everything else, it does apply, so he's got to keep what he needs to keep. A non-Jew, right? A non-Jew's not going to keep what a Jew keeps. Now, there's a much wider gap what a non-Jew can do, right? So, he's got to keep by the Noahide laws. The Noahide laws are an umbrella group, right? It's 7 laws, but it's an umbrella for many other laws as well. So be that as it may, even if it's an umbrella group for all the other laws, there's a very wide range. That means they want to keep certain aspects of Shabbos, they're allowed to. They want to keep less aspects of Shabbos, also they can keep what pretty much whatever they want when it comes to the holidays and Shabbos, as long as on the festival and on Shabbos they don't keep it exactly like a Jew, right? That they're not allowed to do. That they have an obligation to break Shabbos on purpose to show they're not keeping it like a Jew. But if they want to keep it almost like a Jew, they certainly can. So this is one of the downsides about being a Noahide, and that is that people can hold at many different levels. Right? There's some people that won't drive, on Saturday, on Shabbos. There are others that will, and their observance levels will be way different. Now, when it comes to Orthodox Jews in general, right, forget all the different camps within the Orthodoxy, within general, they have to be holding by the same thing. Meaning they have to keep Shabbos, they have to keep Kashrus, have to keep Taras HaMishpacha, marital purity laws. It can't speak Lashon Hara, it can't speak badly against others. All these different things. Kashrus, the holidays, all these different things they agree on. It could be certain things, certain philosophical things they may disagree on, but 99% they agree on. So therefore, it's one law for them, that there's no question. It's just a question of, okay, how much is the person, where's the person holding? Not so much, what they're going to do. Everyone has the same obligation. Right? Every Jew's going to have the same obligation. I mean, there will be a difference between men and women that we've spoken about many times. Women are exempt by any mitzvahs that are bound by time. So therefore, prayer, for instance, she'll have an obligation to pray at least once a day, maybe even twice a day, but at the end of the day, she doesn't have to go to a synagogue to do it. She has to be part of a minyan. She doesn't have to be there with 10 men. She's got other responsibilities. Even if she doesn't have little kids around, she's still exempt. If she wants to go to synagogue, she can, right? She doesn't have an obligation to. At the same time, a woman and a man are different. They're created different. Physically, they have spiritual differences as well. But women also have to keep Shabbos, they have to keep Kashrus, have to hold by the family purity laws. They're not allowed to speak Lashon Hara, like all these things are the same. So when we look at it, and again, this is part of the confusing part, and that is that people say, look, it says one law. It's one law for everybody. But that's not true. Because Jews are not the same as non-Jews. If God wanted to create everybody the same, and He wanted them all to be Jewish, they would have been. Obviously, there's a purpose for non-Jews in the world. That being said, when the Torah here says it's one law, it's one law, it's one law for everybody. Right? It'll be one law for them and for us. That would seem to say that we all do the same thing. So we know from the Torah, and we know from the commentaries, that can't be true. It can't be true because non-Jews are different. They're created different. They have a different purpose. They don't have the same, the same soul makeup as a Jew. So if that's true, for argument's sake, let's say that's true, then they can't do what a Jew does. Exactly. They can come close, right? But they have a different function. If they want to convert, they're certainly allowed to. If they don't want to convert, they don't have to. But what they both agree on, Jew and non-Jew, is that the Torah speaks to both of them. The Torah is universal. You want to go in a certain track, be a Noahide, right? Super Noahide, whatever you want to call them. They can do certain things. They want to keep a lot of Shabbos, fine. They want to keep less Shabbos, fine. They want to keep more of the holidays, less of the holidays, doesn't matter. They can keep whatever level they want. At the same time, the bottom line is going to be that they have to be within the boundaries of Torah. They have to be within the parameters. So therefore, it's not going to be the same. It says one Torah for all. Yeah, it's going to be one Torah, and it's going to be fundamental for either person, Jew or non-Jew. The only question is what their obligations are. For a Jew, it's all or nothing, right? He's got to keep the entire Torah, whatever it applies. Things that don't apply today, okay, we don't have to do. But everything else, kashrus, Shabbos, family purity laws, Lashon Hara, blessings, prayer, all these different things Jews got to do. A non-Jew won't have that obligation. So when it says Torah Achas, it's one Torah. You're right. 100%, it's one Torah. All that means is how I tap in. Where am I coming from? Am I a Jew or am I a non-Jew who doesn't want to convert? That is the question. If a non-Jew wants to convert, then he's like a Jew, right? If he doesn't want to convert, then he's like a non-Jew, right? That would seem pretty obvious. But there's a tremendous misconception. And that misconception is, well, God gave the Torah to everyone, right? It's one Torah, so I can do what I want. I can pray like a Jew, I can keep Shabbos like a Jew, I can do all these things. But that's not true. People make the same mistake and they say, well, you go back to creation. Let's go all the way back to creation, where, at the end of chapter 1, God creates Shabbos, and he creates Shabbos in general. You go to Exodus chapter 20, Shabbos is given to the Jewish people, right? 10 commandments, right? Remember, keep Shabbos. So I had somebody tell me, who's that for? That was for the Jews who are at Mount Sinai, not for the non-Jews. But if a non-Jew wants to tap in, he can, but Shabbos is given to a Jew. So if you go back to the beginning of Genesis, as we mentioned, so someone mentioned me many years ago, see, Shabbos is given to non-Jews also. They can keep it just as much as a Jew. Well, that's not true. The reason it's not true is because the general command, or the general idea of Shabbos that God brings to the world, that's what's spoken about in Genesis, beginning of chapter 2. Or the end of chapter 1. But the command, who's going to keep it, is given in Exodus chapter 20. Right? It's given, who are the 10 commandments given to? The Jews, not the non-Jews. Right? Pretty clear. So what are the 1 of 10 commandments? Keeping Shabbos. Again, let's not make the mistake. A non-Jew wants to tap in. Is he allowed to tap into Shabbos? Yes. Can he tap in exactly like a Jew? No. So you say, why not? If Shabbos is given to everybody, as it says in Genesis, which is not true, but, God put it out there. So the non-Jew can say, well, they're given to me also. But then the Talmud says, non-Jew who keeps Shabbos is liable for the death penalty. Why? If we just said by Noah he's allowed to tap in, he just can't keep it like a Jew, because if he keeps it like a Jew, he's liable for the death penalty. I just didn't go further with that. Why? So why is that? So the Talmud says, brought down in the Medrash, mentioned this many times as well. God went to all the nations, and he asked them if they wanted the Torah. Right? He goes to Yishmael. Right? He goes to the Arabs and say, you want the Torah? They say, boy, what's written in it? It says, don't steal. Right? But if you look at the book of Genesis, when it mentions about Yishmael, what do they say about him? They say his hand's in everybody, and everybody's hand's in him. And he's a wild man. That means, he's going to steal. That's his nature. So you'll say, or as Yishmael said, don't steal. It's my livelihood. It's what I do for a living. Now we're not interested. Goes to Esav. And he goes to Esav and he says, you want the Torah? Esav says, what's written in it? It says, don't kill. It says, don't kill, but, I got the blessings. The Torah says, Al Cherev Tichya. Right? You're going to live by the sword. I make my living by killing. Now, not interested. God goes to all the other nations. As the Talmud says, and the Medrash brings down, all the other nations say, no, we're not interested. Comes on the Jewish people, who says, you want the Torah? They say, sure. You want to know what's written in it? Nah, who cares? God, you have a track record. It's okay. So what do the Jewish people say? Jewish people say, Naaseh v'nishma. They say, we will hear, we will do. That's it. They're not interested in anything else. Whatever God says, they're going to do it. God says, fine. Now, anybody at this point, who wants to be part of Torah has to convert. And if they don't want to convert, that's also fine. But why should it be? Why should it be? Let's ask the question. Why should it be? A non-Jew has the right to tap in when he rejected the Torah. They said, nah, I live my life by killing. I live my life by stealing. Not interested in the Torah. Now all of a sudden, generations later, you want to come and you want to say it belongs to me. I want to be able to keep Shabbos like a Jew. Who says? You had your chance. You blew it, or maybe not you, maybe your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents blew it, okay? So even if they blew it, so you have to go through conversion if you want to convert. If you don't want to conversion, you don't want to go through it, that's also fine. At the same time, though, you're not allowed to keep Shabbos like a Jew because your great-great-great-great-grandparents rejected the Torah. Finished. So I had somebody once tell me that if I would have been there, I wouldn't have rejected it. I said, how can I ever break Shabbos? That's not what God wants. Well, the Talmud says, first of all, there's a mitzvah to listen to the rabbis. The rabbis tell you, if you keep Shabbos like a Jew, you're going to die. Right? You're going to get the death penalty. So, obviously, God says it's not a good thing. So, when we look at it that way, really not much to say. There was a certain time where non-Jews could come and they wouldn't have to convert. They could have joined the Jewish people before Mount Sinai. The fact that they didn't, after the fact, it's over. If they want to go through the process of conversion, fine. If not, you're not allowed to. So a non-Jew says, I want to keep the laws like a Jew, I just don't want to convert. No such thing. Right? They can't do that. Torah is given to the Jews only. The non-Jews, though, have a purpose in Torah. They certainly have to learn what applies to them. At the same time, though, they can't keep it exactly like a Jew. So the question is, okay, so what should they keep? What mitzvah should they keep? So there are plenty of things they can do. They want to keep Shabbos, they want to keep the festivals, they can't. They want to build a sukkah, they want to eat matzah, they want to have a Passover Seder. They are certainly allowed to. They want to make blessings, they're allowed to. The Rambam says any mitzvah they do, they'll get credit. They'll get merit for doing it. Do they have to do that? No. They only have to keep what they need to keep. If they want to go beyond that, they're more than welcome to do it. Just keep in mind, that again, one of the downsides of all this is that there are many, many different levels of where Noahides are holding. And, I've spoken to a number of Noahides, and it's a frustrating point, that they deal with because some of them are holding better than others, meaning they're doing more, some are doing less, some anywhere in the middle. So if that's the case, then it's almost like a free-for-all. So what should a person do? So if a person's a Noahide, I would tell them, whatever you're going to do, at least be consistent. You want to make Kiddush Friday night. You want to have a Shabbos meal Friday night. Do it every week. You want to have also during the day. Do it every week. Be as consistent as possible. Certainly better to move in a place where there are more Jews around. Where there's like an Orthodox presence. If not, the next best thing, is being virtual and having a virtual community. It's not the same, right? I don't think it's really that close, but at least you're hanging out and speaking with people that are similar, that are certainly similar in what they believe. So that is definitely a plus. I did a course called Discover Your Biblical Path, where where people coming out of idolatry have an opportunity, to understand what it means to be a Jew and what it means to be a Noahide. And in one of the modules spoke about the difficulties, being a convert, and being a Noahide. And one of the ideas that came up was this idea that, there aren't so many Noahide communities out there, and there isn't so much of a presence. There are, there are starting to build, etc. For some people, it's only online, right? That is a detraction. I'm not saying someone should convert because of that and have to move to a Jewish community, and all that. There may be plenty of circumstances where they don't want to convert. They're not interested in converting. They still want to eat shrimp, so let them eat shrimp, right? They don't want to be a part of it. But the bottom line over here is, whether you're a Jew or whether you're a non-Jew, the Torah is forever, right? As the Torah here says, it's for all generations. And it's going to apply for all generations. The only thing is, even though it says it's Torah Achaz, even though it says it's all one Torah, keep in mind it may be one Torah, but you can go in different directions within those parameters. And you can't take those parameters, and blur it. What do I mean by blur it? So if a Noahide, let's say, goes to an Orthodox synagogue, and he says, I want to come here and pray. I want to come here and pray every week or whatever. The Orthodox rabbi would say, you want to convert? The person says no. So he says, you don't want to convert, but you want to come to this community, like why? You might think, a person's going to be a missionary, or it sounds kind of weird. The fact that they want to come, they want to participate, but they don't want to convert. Because most Orthodox rabbis will say, if you're going to come, you might as well convert. Right? They don't necessarily know how to deal with Noahides, many of them. That's okay. That's okay. And you have to work that out with the rabbi, what he's going to allow you to do, not allow you to do. But there is a genuine path that the non-Jew can go down, but you can't blur it. In other words, you can't be like a Jew and not convert. In other words, you can't go all the way and say, well, I can't convert because my wife doesn't want to convert or whatever. The idea is that, you want to go in a certain path. You want to take some of Judaism and, some things, some customs and do them. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a question of how far you take it. That's why it's crucial to understand when it says one Torah, it cannot mean that the Torah is the same for Jew and non-Jew. It can't mean that because Jews have other obligations that non-Jews don't have. So, therefore, it has to mean what a non-Jew is obligated to do according to the Torah, within the parameters of the Torah. Because if it's not within the parameters of the Torah, I don't care what you say, I don't care what philosophy you believe in, etc. You can't just do what you want, right? Remember that song, can't do what you want, right? You can't, because you turn the Torah into a pretzel. And as I mentioned many times in these videos, you turn the Torah into a pretzel, what happens? It's going to disappear. Right? Just look at the other so-called Jewish movements that are out there. They are disappearing. Right? They're totally disappearing off the face of the map. 70, 80% into marriage. That's it. Game over. So, one Torah, and this is actually the difference between Judaism and every other so-called religion, and that is, it's not just believe in us, otherwise you're going to fry in hell forever. Right? The Christians definitely believe in that. You don't believe in JC, you're going to fry in hell forever. The Muslims, same thing. Not only that, they'll say, if you don't believe like we do, then we're going to have to kill you. Right? They say, well, the Quran is such a peace-loving book. Yeah, read it. Doesn't sound so peace-loving to me. So, according to all these other groups, either we're right and everyone else is wrong. Right? That's the way they look at it. And Judaism says, no, we believe we have absolute truth. That's definitely true. We have proof for that. Doesn't matter. That's not the topic for now. But if you want to join, anybody can join at whatever level they want. A Jew has to keep what he needs to keep. What the Torah says he has to keep. A non-Jew's got a lot more leeway. Right? He's got a tremendous amount more leeway what he can do. But it's universal. Right? This is the difference. We are the only universal religion that exists. Because we're not saying if you don't do what we say, if you don't become like us, then you're going to fry in hell forever. Non-Jew has a path they can take. Right? It's a legitimate path. Now, if they don't take the path they need to, yeah, they are liable. They are definitely going to be liable. But not because they don't believe in Judaism. Right? That's not the issue. A non-Jew has to keep these Noahide laws, right, that were passed down from Adam to Noah, and then there were others added along the way afterwards, and Moshe got them, and then Moshe passed them down. So a non-Jew, when they keep the Noahide laws, they certainly have to believe that God gave the Torah to Moshe, Moshe passed it down. That's 100%. At the same time, they can tune in as much as they want, right? But they have to keep what they need to keep as a Noahide. It doesn't mean, well, if I don't keep Judaism, and I don't convert, I'm going to fry in hell forever. It's not true. A Noahide has their own path, but it has to be within the path of the Torah. Because if it's not within the path of the Torah, it doesn't matter. All right? Then it's like, it's made up in my own image. Right? Torah made in my own image. Now, there are a lot of things that apply to non-Jews that they would have no idea about. So that's why certainly a non-Jew has to find a mentor, rabbi, somebody, right, to teach them what the Noahide laws, are. And there are many that a non-Jew probably wouldn't have thought of, certainly off the top of their head. So the general rules we mentioned before is that they have to keep any law that makes logical sense. And actually, this week, so I'm going to speak about sorcery. And one of the things about sorcery is that, as it's brought down, sorcery sort of confounds God's heavenly kingdom. Or it's not just confounds, but really it's a contradiction. Because here you're giving power to other sources, and you're saying these other sources are independent of God. Now, for Christians, that's a good thing, right? Because that makes sense for them. Because that's where Mr. Satan comes from, his own independent power. Whereas in Judaism, no. The angel of death, the evil inclination, doesn't have his own power. He can't do whatever he wants, right? Look at the book of Job. Can't do whatever he wants. Unless God, gives him permission. Comes to Job, he doesn't allow him to kill him. He said you can do all the other things, you can't kill him. So, for us Jews, these powers don't have free will. Christians, that's a major problem. So what do? So in the verse in Isaiah that says that God created evil, so they changed the verse. They not reinterpret it, they change translation. So when in doubt, we have a problem, let's change the translation to make it fit our world, our worldview. So we as Jews, are not, looking at it, in that way. So this opens up a whole thing that non-Jews have a place to come. They have a place to learn. I mean, they have to find someone, quote unquote, the real deal in order to teach them. That's for sure. But, it's a heck of a lot more complicated, I think, than most people think. Because when it comes, so we mentioned, by sorcery. So Talmud says, maybe a non-Jew's obligated in that. Maybe he's not allowed, to do such a thing. So I'll just give one little glimpse, into, what this class is going to be on, and that is that if it contradicts the way God runs the world, in other words, it takes power, quote unquote, away from him. If a person, for instance, now this is forbidden for a non-Jew also, if they take a peach and a plum, put it together and make a nectarine, or they take a horse and a donkey, make a mule. Now, God allows it to happen. He doesn't stop them. But as I saw brought down, you have two separate forces, right? You got a horse and a donkey, you got a peach and a plum. You stick them together, you make a third thing, and then there's a different thing that comes out of it. Right? There's a third thing that comes out of it. So there is a direct result of, if you do this, this will happen. Now, even though that's true, it's not what God wants. He'll allow it to happen. But what you're doing, in essence, is you're playing with creation. And playing with creation is a big no-no. Again, we have free will. God's not going to stop a person from doing it. At the same time, when you start messing around with creation, creating new things, etc., that's what God wants. He set up creation the way he wanted to. Okay, we've messed things up. We've taken things on we shouldn't have done. Even so, when you do that, it goes against what God wants in the world. So then the question is, okay, I understand applies to a Jew, and there are going to be many different aspects of sorcery, which get into later. There are many other aspects, bringing up souls, and all kinds of other things that are associated with sorcery. That being the case, then what I'm doing is I'm messing around with creation. So for a non-Jew, it makes sense they shouldn't tap into that either, because in essence they're giving these other sources power that they shouldn't put together and do these things. So for a Jew and a non-Jew should be the same. So, keep in mind now, most people listening probably say, gee, I never thought about that. I never thought about, I can't plant these seeds next to these seeds and come up with a new thing, right? Why would I think that's a Noahide law? There's only 7. Again, don't make the mistake. There are 7 main ones, and everything else comes under this umbrella, right? It's kind of like the 10 Commandments. Everything else is, it's commentary, so to speak. This is the essence, but there's a lot more to it. It's more like the foundation. Let's say that. It's more like the base. But there are a ton of other things that most people probably in a million years never would have thought of that should apply to non-Jews also. So a non-Jew has to tap in, but they have to tap in the right way according to the Torah. Jews also have to tap in according to the way the Torah wants us to. That means we have to keep rabbinic Judaism. We have to listen to what the rabbis tell us. I'm not going to go into detail about that. I made 2 videos on Tanakh Talk on oral tradition and how it works and why we have to listen to the rabbis, why there's a mitzvah to listen to them, etc. So, that being said, there are certain boundaries. There are certain parameters. We can't just do what we want when we want, because that's going to make the Torah go haywire. It's opening a Pandora's box, that's going to end up in a disaster. In theory, I would say, even if that's true, let's say philosophically, it would bring more people back to Torah, which I don't think it will. I mean, it hasn't, right? If we'd be all inclusive, we count women, we allow them to, have, prominent positions within Judaism, let them be rabbis, do other things, that'll bring a lot more people into the fold, and bring a lot of people back to traditional Judaism and keeping Shabbos and other things. If that would be the case, maybe, probably not, but maybe, I could be a drop open-minded, and we can have a discussion. But in, my vast experience, over the last 20 years, will lead me to believe that that's not the case, right? With all the things that you want to be inclusive of, when it comes to, let's say, the Reform and Conservative movement, you would think there'd be masses, thousands, tens of thousands coming back. You become so open-minded till your brains fall on the floor that the masses should be coming back to tshuva, right? They should be repenting. And the fact that they're repenting, they'll come back to closer to traditional Judaism. They'll keep kashrus, they'll keep Shabbos, right? They'll keep these other things, they'll learn, right? They'll actually get knowledge, real knowledge. That's what I would think. But that has definitely not been the case, just the opposite, right? There's been lack of knowledge. You have less people coming to synagogue more than ever. So you're all inclusive. That's not the end result you're getting. It's not even close, right? It's certainly not even close. So that being said, it doesn't work. So I don't care what your philosophy is. I'm just saying in theory, if that philosophy would actually work, we could have a little bit of a discussion. So, so a Jew has to keep what they need to keep within proper guidelines. When you go outside of those guidelines, when you want to change, when you want to change things, open things up, be more open-minded, it's not going to work, right? It's just going to be a, disaster. So a Jew has to keep what they need to keep according to exactly what the Torah says and what the rabbis tell us it means. And a non-Jew has to be able to tap in to do what they need to do according to what Judaism says they're allowed to do or, not allowed to do. Now, in all this, no one says it's easy. No one says, a person's going to do this, look how easy it's going to be, and it's going to be no evil inclination, it's going to be great, they're going to be so inspired. Yeah, a person's going to get beaten down in life in general. So even if we understand what we have to do, at the same time, it does not make it easy in any way, shape, or form. But we have to do things the way things need to be done. So when the Torah says over here, let's get back to the original verse here. When the Torah says over here, it's one Torah, it is. The only question is, how do we tap in? Do we tap in? As a Jew has to keep what they need to keep. That means everything unless things don't apply. Or, doesn't mean, it does mean that a non-Jew, and he can tap in at certain levels, right? He can't do exactly what a Jew does, but when it says one Torah, it means it's universal. It means a non-Jew can also learn Torah. What applies to them. And they have to keep what applies to them. You can't overstep those boundaries because, again, a non-Jew is a non-Jew. They aren't allowed, to keep Shabbos like a Jew. They're not allowed to keep the festival like a Jew. So there are boundaries. So therefore, they have to stay within those boundaries, and you can't bypass that. So, like we mentioned before, many Orthodox rabbis will say, you want to keep this, you want to keep that, why don't you just convert? Right? So a lot of them aren't necessarily informed of what a non-Jew is allowed to do or not. So at the same time, though, they have to be consistent and do what they need to do, under the guidance of the Torah. But it does not mean, and this is where the confusion comes in, as we mentioned before, it does not mean in any way, shape, or form it's one Torah for everybody, and then everyone can do the same thing. That's not what it means. It can't mean that. Because if it meant that, then everyone would be the same. God would have created everybody the same. We all would have been Jews, if that's the case. Right? But obviously, God did not want everyone to be a Jew. The Jews are God's chosen people because we chose him and he chose us. The other nations, they weren't interested. So if they want to tap in, they're allowed to, up to a point. Now, up to a point means exactly that. They can't overstep certain boundaries. And that's where a person definitely needs, a strong amount of guidance and help in order to know what to do, what not to do, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, so they don't overstep what they're not allowed, to do. So the Torah is going to be the same. The only thing is how a person is going to tap in. So that's one main aspect. The other thing is that I'll just mention for a second, and that is that when it says that it's all one Torah, when it says all one Torah, it says the language of a chok. A chok is something we don't understand. Right? The mitzvah we don't understand, like we mentioned before, like the red heifer. So something like that we don't understand, it's for all generations. So as the Netziv says, we have to look at even if the reason disappears, we have to look at everything as being like a law we don't understand. Because if it's something we understand, fine, but it might not be the only reason, that is given. If you look at next week's parsha, just a little prelude, to that, and if you look at Korach and where Korach failed, if Korach, Ramosha Feinstein, Zechot Tzadik Livrocha, when the Gadol Ador, the greatest rabbi of the last generation in America, so he says on Parshas Korach that Korach misunderstood one major thing. And the one major thing he misunderstood was the fact that he should have looked at the Torah as one big law that we don't understand. In other words, it's a divine decree. If it's a divine decree, what are you going to ask questions on? It doesn't matter you understand it more, you understand it less. It's a divine decree, period. We should look at everything like the red heifer. If we looked at everything like the red heifer, why is the person ever going to sin? Why is he going to be jealous? Why should he be jealous of Moshe and Aaron? It's a decree. God made a decree. He said to Moshe, this is what you're going to do. He didn't add, he didn't subtract, he just did what God told him to do, and he wrote it down. So Korach thought he got the raw end of the deal, and he should have been the high priest. And Moshe gave it, to his brother. His brother had protection. He was close to Moshe, so Moshe gave it to him. No, it's all a divine decree. Do we understand a lot of things in the Torah? Absolutely not. Right? A lot of them are divine decrees. We look for answers. We're not just saying, I believe. We're looking for answers why we do what we do, right? And sometimes it's a divine decree, right? We don't have proper answers. In the case of the red heifer, we don't understand properly, 100% what it means. It doesn't mean, if the temple existed, we wouldn't have to keep it. We still have to keep it, but I think people would be a lot better off, as Ramosha Feinstein brings down, if we looked at the world and the Torah in general as everything being a divine decree. That's it. However much we understand more, we understand less, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what's going to happen is we're going to have to keep it anyway. So if we have to keep it anyway, you're more likely not to go astray if understanding that it's a divine decree. Not trying to look for leniencies, or whatever in order to get out of what you need to do. Because what's going to happen is when we look at it as God said it, we do it, and that's it. Finished. That's it. There is no questioning over here. We're doing it because it's a divine decree. No more, no less. So, Ramosha Feinstein says that's where Korach missed the boat. And Korach was no dummy. Right? He's certainly no dummy for sure. He held the Aron. He was alive. He was able to live carrying the Aron. He had to be on a high level. But as the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Ethics of Our Father, says that desire and honor and jealousy can take us out of this world. So one explanation is literally can kill you. That's what happened to Korach. Jealousy killed him. Got him and 250 other people killed. 250 great people, got them killed. So that's why it uses the language over here to tell you that doesn't matter why it's brought down. You still have to keep it. It's one Torah for everybody because God decreed it. Decreed that's what it is and what the laws are, etc. Doesn't matter you're a Jew or non-Jew. You have to tap in the way God wants you to, as a chok, as a law. Even if we don't understand it, we still have to tap in within our own boundaries, within our own parameters. You don't do that, it's game over. Because then, if I don't understand it as much, I won't do it, or I'll do it the way I think I understand it, whatever the case is. Bottom line, it's an absolute disaster. It doesn't work. And we would definitely live better, more productive lives, if we did understand this basic fundamental fact. I do want to mention that I came up with this course called Discover Your Biblical Path. It's got 6 modules. If anyone coming out of Christianity or idolatry, anyone interested, find out what it means to be a Jew. I went through some of the holidays, Shabbos, etc., what it means to be a non-Jew, and I went through some of the Noahide laws, how things apply or don't apply, how to find a mentor, a rabbi, a community, what issues are going to be with family and friends, etc. And there are 7 interviews. There are 7 interviews with people that either converted to Judaism or still in the process of conversion and difficulties along the way that they went through. And also Noahides, people that were non-Jews, didn't convert, and were not interested in conversion. I also have an Intro to Kabbalah class every Tuesday night, 9 o'clock New York time. And there we've spoken about all kinds of things, about why God created the world, the purpose of man, spiritual forces, reincarnation, where the nations fit in. Now we're speaking about the Shema. We're going to speak about the uniqueness of God, the unity of God, in prayer, etc. That's every Tuesday night, 9 o'clock. I also have 2 question and answer sessions that's open for anybody. It's Tuesday, 10 o'clock in the morning, New York time. Thursday will be tonight. Thursday afternoon, 2 o'clock New York time. Wednesday nights I give a class, or I do a live video on Tanakh Talk, controversial issues. Last one we did this morning, or last night for most people, was on why ultra-Orthodox Jews don't do the army in Israel. So that's on Tanakh Talk, TENAKTALK. Find that on YouTube. I also give conversion classes. I give Noahide classes. Take a look at my Facebook fan page, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, or Beyond Noahides. You can also take a look at my blog, orthodoxconversion.com. And anyone who wants to contact me, you can contact me at rabbichaimkaufman.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Everyone have a great Shabbos.